the milk crate challenge as more crazy than the fire challenge, but try it for yourself. However, the milk crate challenge ultimately resulted in more injuries. Speaking of crazy, it's crazy that nearly 75% of you are watching. We post fire videos every Friday, and we're now on the road to 2 million subscribers. If you like the videos I make, well, be a person, children. The blackout challenge or the choking game might be the oldest challenge on this entire video, and actually predates the entire internet itself. I'm going to be focusing on the black direct oxygen flow to the brain, specifically to feel a state of euphoria and to also experience the feeling of having that restricted oxygen flow to the brain. However, in more recent times, people do this with their friends. Reaction to essentially losing consciousness and literally losing brain cells. How the blackout challenge would typically work is one person would essentially take a deep breath in while another person would simultaneously give them a strong bear hug from behind until that person passed out from a lack of oxygen. Typically, as a result of this lack of oxygen, people would fall over and act drunk for the effects were. Now, here's the deal. Some young people watching these videos just thought it was cool to see somebody act so weird and thought it was, almost like a morbid curiosity. However, some young people were very curious to have this experience for themselves, seeing it almost as a way to get high without doing drugs or alcohol. And this is a major dangerous factor in this entire challenge, because young people seeing people do this online gave them a false sense of security that, oh, I'll feel funny or dizzy, but I'll be fine right after. And everybody online's doing it, so I can do it. When in reality, it's actually that false sense of confidence that provides so much risk. Not necessarily to one individual particularly, but because, once again, with scale, more people are trying it, there's more opportunities for things to go wrong. And go wrong, they did. You see, believe it or not, oxygen deprivation in the brain is extremely dangerous. And even brief interruptions of oxygen in your brain can cause seizure, long-term brain damage, heart complications, and even death in more ways than one. With the most common cause of death being asphyxiation, however, the second most common cause of death was actually head injury. That's because in some cases, people trying this challenge would lose consciousness and then fall and hit their head, in some cases either causing instant death or an injury that resulted in death not long after, which is just heartbreaking. The whole blackout challenge has claimed victims as young as 10 years old. And it's simply all because people saw it online, they thought it was safe, they thought it was a way that they could just feel silly for a few moments, when in reality, it's not that you just feel dizzy and silly, you are literally depriving your most important organ of its most important nutrient. And sure, the videos online may seem silly, but attempting to do this yourself is literally putting your life at risk. Aware of that fact. And the results, as we've discussed and seen, have truly been unfortunate. And that's kind of one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to make this video. A, to discuss some truly ludicrous and just outrageous trends that people have actually done, and also to try to hopefully spread some awareness. If you see people doing something online that seems dangerous or looks dumb, it probably is, and you probably shouldn't do it. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna say, in basically no case should you do something you see people doing online. Not to be grandpa bro, but if we've learned anything from this video, it's that, well, internet challenges are not your friend. And I guess before we get to the I obviously couldn't fit them all in one video. So if you guys want a part 2 to this video, leave a like below or just leave a comment saying part 2, and I would be more than happy to make that video for you. But with that being said, let's move on to the last entry of this video, the Kia challenge. So far in this video, we've discussed challenges that are either destructive to others' property or your personal body. But this final entry on this list is a challenge that does both. The Kia challenge started on TikTok in roughly 2022, and it was started by a group of teenagers who later became known as the Kia Boys. And the Kia Boys went viral because they were posting videos of themselves seemingly non-stop of them breaking into Kia and Hyundai vehicles using simple tools, starting them in under a minute, and then joyriding them in the most dangerous and dumb ways. I'm assuming most of you have seen or at least heard of the Kia Boys, but if you haven't, well, you're in for a treat. Like I mentioned, in the early 2020s, it was discovered that almost every Kia and Hyundai model had a major flaw. There was no engine immobilizer, meaning that if you had very basic tools them and you had a brand new car at your disposal. And with how popular Kia and Hyundai models have been in recent years, the Kia Boys and anybody wanting to try the Kia challenge basically had instant access to the focal point of this challenge. Obviously, when these videos started popping up on TikTok, how insane they were. Kids were breaking into random Kias, starting them within a minute, joyriding them in the most dangerous of ways, typically speeding, hanging out the side of them, ramming into their vehicles, and then just ditching them and doing it all again. Sometimes numerous times in the same night. Obviously, I don't think I need to go into excruciating detail on why people with no license driving stolen cars at reckless speeds in neighborhoods is dangerous to literally everybody, but, well, in case you're missing part of your brain yourself, the biggest dangers associated with this challenge are, of course, danger to road goers, danger to pedestrians, danger to the people that are in the cars, whether they be the burglar or people that are simply friends with the burglar that simply thought a joyride could be fun. And on top of the potential loss of life or injury that could be caused out of the stupidity, of course, we have property damage. Obviously, we have the individual that is likely just trying to get by who has just had their car damaged and stolen, but we also have all of the property damage caused by these joyrides that typically hit other vehicles, street signs, power poles, mailboxes, you name it, a Kia Boy, Kia car has hit it. And it seemed like in 2022, there was simply no stopping the Kia Boys, and these videos were viral. Not only videos from the Kia Boys themselves, but also videos of people trying it, news clips of the news covering the Kia Boys, and even interviews with the Kia Boys from different YouTubers. The whole Kia Boys trend and phenomenon became so popular that even TikTok got backlash for even hosting the content of these people doing it. And this trend was simply one of those trends that, while it's crazy to assume that somebody can be inspired to just steal a car by watching a video, because of how viral and prevalent this whole trend and phenomenon was, there was a massive spike of Grand Theft Autos during this time, which led to a plethora of viral videos, a plethora of injuries, a handful of deaths, and ultimately massive reform for automakers to ensure that this would never happen again. I think the overarching theme on this entire video is the fact that, sure, it may be interesting or shocking or even funny to see one of these videos online, somebody eating a Tide Pod or setting themselves on fire or falling off a milk crate. But what I really wanted to highlight in this video is that, sure, the 5 seconds you see may be shocking or funny or crazy, but the reality of that situation is much more dangerous than you could ever assume. Not only because the person you saw in that video might be permanently injured, but also because the video that you saw and thought was funny, somebody else saw and thought was inspiring. And well, their lack of education and misplaced inspiration could have led to serious bodily harm. The richest people in human history. In the modern day, the position of world's richest person fluctuates pretty often, and these fluctuations are typically based off of stock price and other economic factors. And while it's interesting to talk about who the richest person in the modern day is, if you have an inquisitive mind, these thoughts may bring you to the question of who was the richest person in other time periods, and who was the richest person in human history. In this video, we're going to answer both of these questions and more, starting at the very beginning of human civilization, the Stone Age. It may serve as no surprise that because the Stone Age is, well, for the most part, prehistoric, we don't have any verifiable sources of wealthy individuals. That being said, that doesn't mean that we don't know what wealth looked like in the Stone Age, and for that reason, I wanted to at least quickly mention it. As I've mentioned in a few directly in your ability to survive. And the things that granted your survival in the Stone Age were food, shelter, water. In the Stone Age, being alive is a lot better than being dead with a pile of money. If you were rich in the Stone Age, you had a strong tribe around you. Your group consisted of strong, successful, ferocious hunters, attentive and expert gatherers, and passionate mothers taking care of the young. Humans in the Stone Age needed each other to survive, mainly because every aspect of life was work, and you can't do everything all by yourself. But in a tribe, tasks can be done by multiple people, allowing the group to survive. But outside of just tasks, the group also provided protection from natural predators. Because in the Stone Age, humans weren't at the top of the food chain, and there was very much so natural predators that were wanting to eat you. But of course, community isn't the only thing that gave you wealth. Besides having this strong, tight-knit tribe, you also ensure that your tribe is located in a fruitful area of land. And what I mean by this is that hunting is bountiful. Animals consistently graze near your tribe, making hunting easy and consistent. But beyond just having a good location with consistent food and pelts, it's important that you have access to water, which is why you and your very wealthy tribe also have a perfectly clean stream going right beside your tribe's location. This stream provides your tribe not only with water, but also fish and transportation. But even with all of these Stone Age luxuries, there is still one more way that your tribe could have more wealth, and that is by having the best shelter possible. And in the Stone Age, one of the best options was a natural formation, typically a cave that provided shelter from storms and hot weather, consistent moderate temperatures, and once again, protection from natural predators. And while the bar may seem relatively low for the Stone Age, everything Everything I just described was literally a dream come true. And if you happen to have all of these in your life, you were by far the wealthiest person to live. And by wealthiest, I just mean you were alive, because poverty in the Stone Age was literally just death. So even though our caveman ancestors didn't have much, and we can't verify who was the richest person at the time, it's at least interesting to understand what made a wealthy life during this time period. And it's also a good reminder that life is a blessing. The Bronze Age. No, not LeBron James, the Bronze Age, the time period that comes after the Stone Age. And luckily for us, we have verifiable evidence of who the richest person was during this time period. Wealth in the Bronze Age already looks worlds different than it did in the Stone Age. And that's because during the Bronze Age, human societal development really hit an exponential curve. And while the Stone Age literally went on for millions of years and only really yielded rudimentary structures and stone tools, the Bronze Age is where we really see society develop into small villages and also forging with metals. Most notably in this time period, bronze. With the development of society, culture, and tools, we now have a new definition of wealth. And fortunately, we also have documented history. However, I am using that term lightly because although we do have some texts referring to the reign and wealth of King Solomon, many of them came many years after his lifetime. So take some of these testimonies with a grain of salt. The year is 970 BC, and the kingdom of Israel is now under new management. King Solomon was the successor to his father, King David. It's estimated that King Solomon's rule ran from 970 BC to 931 BC. An impressive 39 years. And keep in mind, during this time period, even living to see 39 was an accomplishment. But longevity is not the point of this video. And what's even more impressive than his reign was his wealth. It's recorded that under the reign of King Solomon, his kingdom actually earned its highest splendor and wealth of all time, with record revenues reaching 666 talents of gold in a single year, which is an ironic number, but that equates to over 18,125 kilograms of gold earned in a single year. Keep in mind, the reason we're talking in precious metal volumes and not, well, dollar values is because during this time, money didn't even exist. Not even any form of coinage. Precious metals were truly the only store of value, meaning that gold was truly the gold standard. And for that reason, King Solomon got a lot of it. And how he got this gold may not be so much of a shock. As the king of a nation, Solomon's wealth primarily came through tax revenue. But on top of this massive tax revenue, he also earned money through trade alliances and also control over important trade routes that linked Africa, Asia, and Europe together. But like any good business mogul, he didn't end there. Solomon was also involved in mining, agriculture, and also building projects funded by the kingdom's resources itself. Meaning that not only did he have a massive personal net worth, but he also had, well, basically infinite money at his expense through the wealth of the nation that he managed. And because of the prosperity that Solomon's kingdom saw during his long reign, it's estimated that King Solomon's net worth would be valued at anywhere from $2 to $3 trillion, which is insane. And since it's kind of variable, let's just average it at 2.5 trillion. Now, like I mentioned earlier, Bible, which isn't an issue until you realize that Solomon lived and died hundreds of years before the Bible took place, essentially. So once again, for that reason, take this one with a grain of salt, but it's definitely an interesting first entry. And while we're on the topic of the Bible and interesting, not only did the Bible mention how wealthy King Solomon was, but they also mentioned how, well, promiscuous he was. And it's literally stated in the Bible that King Solomon had over 700 wives, and because that wasn't enough, he also had an additional 300 concubines. Meaning that this dude literally not only had trillions of dollars, but also had 1,000 girls in his roster. The Iron Age. Interestingly, the Iron Age is not much different than the Bronze Age, and the brief period transitioning from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age was actually a pretty tumultuous time. And while that's kind of beyond the scope of this video, society essentially took 2 steps forward in the Bronze Age, and then 1 step back, and then 2 steps forward again into the Iron Age. And while once humanity sort of stabilized again within the Iron Age, it didn't look too different from the Bronze Age besides one key difference: the main metal at play, obviously being iron. But beyond the introduction of iron, we also see refinements and growth within the civilizations that were formed in the Bronze Age, or at least the ones that survived it. Consider that subtle foreshadowing. Now, once again, one of the richest people to ever exist, and most likely one of the richest people in all of the Iron Age, was a man known as King Croesus. And Croesus was the king of Lydia, a wealthy kingdom that existed in modern-day Turkey. Croesus had a relatively short reign, only reigning from 560 BC to 546 BC, roughly 14 years. But during this time, Croesus became an icon of wealth. And he was so rich, in fact, that the phrase, as rich as Croesus, actually not only gained steam during his reign, but also existed for millennia after his death. But the story of Croesus and Lydia isn't all sunshine and rainbows, because although he did have immense wealth, his reign and life did eventually end up being cut short. But before we describe that, how exactly did he earn all this wealth? As a king, it becomes no surprise that Croesus's wealth was primarily earned through taxation, trade routes, and natural resources within the kingdom of Lydia. Interestingly, in the kingdom of Lydia, there was literally a river that was full of something known as electrum, which was essentially a naturally occurring alloy of silver and gold, which is pretty fortunate. But not only was Croesus known for being rich, but he also changed money forever. He actually started minting some of the world's first coins ever, standardizing the world's first gold and silver coins. And he did this so he could A, centralize his wealth, and B, just got a bit too confident. And this confidence caused him to challenge Cyrus the Great of Persia. Persia being another opposing empire at the time. Croesus felt confident that he could consulted, prophesied that, quote, Croesus would destroy a great empire. And it's believed that Croesus interpreted this message as he had already won the war, so he could begin it and win with ease. Although the opposite was true, and the empire that Croesus would destroy was actually his own. And in 546 BC, Lydia fell to Persia, and it's believed that Croesus was either executed or spared and turned into an advisor for Cyrus. At the peak of his net worth, it's estimated that Croesus had roughly a net worth of $500 billion. Which, I mean, compared to the previous trillionaire, doesn't sound that much, but this net worth is still insanely impressive. And remember, like King Solomon, this wealth was not stored in cash, stocks, crypto. This money was in physical gold and silver. And dude had so much money and so much time that he literally decided to create coinage. I bet King Solomon would have created coinage too if he wasn't messing around with 1,000 women, the classical era. The classical era is where things begin to get really interesting because history is getting more and more documented and wealth is becoming more and more, well, common. That being said, when I had empires that existed during the era, being the Roman Empire. And when you think of Roman Empire, who do you think of? Julius Caesar wouldn't have been a wrong answer. But believe it or not, Julius Caesar wasn't actually the richest Roman. However, who is regarded as one of the richest, if not the